This week for the primary weaving project, we are going to be using looms. This type of loom is called a table or lap loom because it sits flat while you're working with it. And so you can be sitting at a table, you can be sitting on the couch with it in your lap. I've had kids before who lay on the ground on their tummies and they're weaving while they're on their tummies, whatever feels comfortable to you. I've even had kids take this on car trips and weave to pass the time on their car trips. But we're going to be using this flat loom. It does not stand on its own. It's not a standing loom. And you're going to have multiple choices whenever you come to the library. You're going to have multiple choices on widths of your loom, as well as fiber choices and colors of yarn. So let's take a few moments to look at some of these looms that you are going to be choosing from. First of all, if you are my younger students who have never maybe wove before, then I'm going to have you pick up this paper loom, and I would like for you to try first on the paper loom and practice your patterns with two separate colors. And I will model this in a later video. After you feel comfortable with weaving with paper, then you're going to move on to the tabletop loom. I have a very thin loom that is probably best for our younger students, our 5 and 6 year olds for sure. I have a slightly wider loom, and this loom can be used for 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and then I get much wider from there. So I even go further with the width. This would be for the older student who is more accomplished, a more accomplished weaver. Now even this loom is difficult. So if you are having problems with the patterns and the yarn, then even this size is going to be a hard one to start with. So if you are a beginner weaver, I would definitely start with the paper loom and then move on to this thin loom. I love weaving. I feel like it is so relaxing. I love creating. I love moving with my hands. And another thing that I love about weaving that we're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks is that you can find it all over the world. Weaving is not only something that's beautiful, that may be hanging on a wall or maybe on the back of a couch, but it's also something that can be used in the world around you. So you can utilize a weaving. You can use it to hold things. So maybe you have a weaving that is sitting on your coffee table and it's holding something that you want to show off. Maybe you have a weaving that is a rug on the floor. There are so many different reasons that people have weavings in their life, and sometimes the weavings are just fun. This is a weaving that my sister made when she was in school, and this is just fun. This is just a fun weaving to hang during the holidays. Maybe it's a weaving that can be used. Maybe you want to set your glass of cold lemonade on the weaving like a coaster. So weavings can be utilized, and weavings can just be for a look. Some of the weavings that I love to base my tabletop looms with are the Navajo weavings. This is a picture a vintage picture of the Navajo weaving, and this is actually a standing loom, but they are weaving in between two tree posts. And so weaving can be done anywhere, weaving can be done outside, inside, and even if you don't have all the proper tools, you can still create something beautiful. Now the Navajo probably do not weave in between two tree stumps. You're probably going to see their pieces now with a modern day standing loom. But once again, you can still see the beautiful piece that she is creating. I am excited about you joining me this week. Come back and we'll begin. We're going to use some Navajo pieces to get our minds ready for maybe the colors we want to use on our weaving, or maybe patterns that we are interested in trying to create. I love looking at art examples, whether it is from just everyday people who are creating. Maybe they are creating pieces from their culture, or maybe they are professional artists who are creating their weavings. But I like to look at these to give me an idea of how they are working with their texture and with their colors. When we look at this example, I know that last week we talked about symmetry, and when you are working with a table or lap loom, it is really easy for you to create symmetry. We know that symmetry is about the same on both sides, and when we divide this weaving in half, you can see that on the left and the right hand side that it is the same. We could also divide it horizontally, and what is at the top is also at the bottom. So a beautiful example here. Here's another example. This is called Navajo Eye Dazzler, and it's almost like an optical illusion with the way they have woven their zigzags into their piece. Once again, you could divide it vertically or horizontally and see the same thing on both sides. So these are two examples of weavings from here in America, from our Native Americans. But weavings can be from all over the world. Weavings can be Peruvian maybe. And you can see that this loom is a standing loom with multiple parts that the weaver is using. And this is an example from Africa, and the sections that have been woven have then been stitched together to create a cloth with some of their tribal colors that they have. I love this example because this is the perfect example for our little ones here in town, because you can weave with anything. You could go outside and go to your fence and find leaves and grasses and twigs and weave in and out to make a natural fiber weaving. And it may only last a day or so, but what a beautiful thing that would be. So we have on our loom, we have an area that is called the warp, and the warp is going to be the string or yarn that you place on the loom, and that is what will hold all of your fibers together when you start weaving them in and out. The fibers that you weave in and out are called the weft. So we're going to have the warp and we're going to have the weft. And we will use the looms as the foundational tool for your weaving. You will add your warp first, and then after your warp is on, then you will start your weaving process. And you will get to the part where it looks something like this. You can see this is one of the larger boards that I have worked on with my students over time. And so you have the warp here. You can still see the bottom section of mine. And then you can see all the different areas of the weft that I have been working on over time. So let's get started and let's look at my paper loom. My paper loom is just a piece of paper that I have pre-cut sections into. This would be the loom and the warp all put together. And then the paper strips that you're going to practice with will be what we would consider the weft. When you are weaving, you are creating a pattern. So you are creating a pattern in multiple ways. You are creating a color pattern, and you are creating a pattern that is like over, under, over, under. So if I were to start with my color orange, and I'm going to start on my left hand side, I would go under my first, and then over. Then the next one is going to be lifted up, and this is going to be under, and then I'm going to pull it through over. So over, under, over, under, over. Gonna lift up, pull it through, and continue. And that is the first part of my paper weaving. So I have the pattern, I'm using the orange color, and then I have the pattern of over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Now, my next color is blue. And maybe you think, oh, I've changed my color, so now I can just do the same pattern on the paper loom. Well, watch what happens whenever I do exactly the same thing that I just did with the orange. If I were to do the exact same thing, watch what happens. I have my blue and it's right next to the orange, but look, it moves around, okay? So I did not change the direction pattern. I changed my color, but I didn't change the direction. So on this next one, I have to try a different pattern. Instead of starting with over, this time I have to start with under. So I'm going to take my blue and go under, over. Now I'm going to take my paper, because paper rips, so we have to be careful, and lift up, under, over, under, over. Now lift up my paper, under, over. After a while, it just becomes almost mechanical. It almost becomes like a flow. So now look at my two colors. I have my orange that I started with and then the blue. But look, now my two pieces aren't moving. because I changed the direction of my pattern. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to do the same thing all the way across. And if I get kind of confused, I can just stop and look back at what I've already done. I know that the orange is going to start over and then under. And I know that my blue is going to start under and then over. If this is a little confusing, you can have your loved one help you. You can practice and make mistakes, because after all, this is just paper. You could take it out and try again if you make a mistake. Maybe, for example, with my orange, I went over. Well, look what happens when I do that. I can see that it's not the same. I can see that I've made a mistake. So I would just take it out and I would just try again. There, that was an easy fix. I'm going to continue practicing with my paper weft all the way across. So you have worked with your paper loom and you have woven your orange and blue strips, or whatever color you received, all the way across. And you can see that the pattern has changed at the beginning each time. If you had some problems, you can always take these out and try again. You can practice. If you want to try different patterns, you can do that as well. Maybe you want to do orange, orange, blue, orange, orange, blue, and so on. Just as long as you change the pattern each time to keep it where it needs to be. So now let's put this aside, and today we are going to get our plan ready for our weaving. I took a piece of paper and I sketched just briefly our little loom, and I'm going to come up with an idea for the color pattern that I would like to try to weave. I think I'm going to use mostly yarn for this piece, but you could maybe choose a type of fiber like this twine. I have used twine to create some of my pieces. You can use colorful yarn that changes color as you weave. You can use a single color to make a specific pattern that you're interested in. There are also other types of fibers like this natural grass that I used in this weaving example. Maybe you want to use colors that are just real neutral like I've done. I really wanted to focus on texture, how it feels on this piece compared to maybe bright and bold colors. It's just really whatever you're wanting to do. Maybe you're wanting to match the colors in your bedroom. So you decide, but let's start by making a plan. I'm gonna start here at the top, and I'm gonna do a wide section of this green, blue, lime color. And I'm just going to label it. If I have some crayons nearby, I could color it real fast if I needed to know maybe more of what I was trying to do as I went. I'm going to do a wide section of this, and then I'm going to do a narrow or thin section of a different color, and I think that I want to do maybe a black here, so I'm going to label that out to the side, the black, and maybe another thin color here. I'm not really sure what color I want to be there for now. I'm gonna go ahead and put a neutral like white, just for now. I might come back and change that. And then here in the middle, I'm going to do a large section. And then I'm gonna come back at the bottom because I want my piece to be symmetrical. Just like the Navajo examples that we were looking at earlier, where we could divide it in half vertically or divide it in half horizontally. I want it to be the same on both sides. So I'm going to create the thin sections here again. And if I have my green and blue color at the top, I would have it at the bottom. So I'm gonna label that. And then my black would be here and my white would be here. So this is my basic plan. And once again, if you want to color your plan, your idea, then go ahead and do that. We have some great yarn to choose from, and when we start weaving tomorrow, I will show you the different colors that you can possibly use.